August 1995, a small town in Puerto Rico. A farmer walks out at dawn to feed his goats. He finds 15 of them dead, not torn apart, not eaten, not scattered by predators, just drained. Every single one. 3 puncture wounds in the chest, no blood, not a drop on the ground, not a drop inside them. And the goats that survived, they were alive, but they would never recover. They stood frozen, staring at nothing, as if they had seen something their brains refused to process. The farmer looked up at the tree line. In the mist, he saw footprints, 3-toed, spaced 4 feet apart, leading up into the canopy. Whatever did this did not walk away. It jumped. To understand what happened, you have to understand where it happened. Dan and Canovanas. Population 40,000. Tucked into the foothills of El Yunque, the only tropical rainforest in the United States National Forest System. Here, the jungle is dense, and at night the darkness is never quiet. Frogs, insects, wind moving through ceiba trees. People in Canovanas know the sounds of their land, and at night, those sounds become a language. The bark of a feral dog, the movement of a mongoose, the low warning breath of a boa constrictor. You learn the difference without realizing it, So when animals began dying in March of 1995, the people there knew something was wrong. Whatever was doing it did not sound like a dog, or a mongoose, or a snake. This was none of those things. It started small, and 1 goat here, a chicken there. Farmers blamed stray dogs. The local government shrugged. And then the deaths began to form a pattern. The animals weren't eaten. They were emptied. And 2, sometimes 3, perfectly round puncture wounds at the base of the neck or the chest. And the blood was gone. All of it. And a goat carries roughly 5 liters of blood. There was no pool on the ground, no smear, no trail. Veterinarians were called. They examined the carcasses and found themselves puzzled. Dr. Miguel Negron, a local veterinarian, told reporters, "I have been practicing for 22 years. I have seen predation by dogs, by mongooses, by birds of prey. I have never seen anything like this." Then he described the wounds. The precision of the incisions, it's almost surgical. By July, more than 100 animals were dead. Goats, sheep, chickens, rabbits, even a cow. The number kept rising. The pattern never changed. Small, precise wounds. No blood, no predator anyone could identify. The town was terrified. And then someone saw it. Her name was Madeline Tolentino. August 1995. 2 in the morning. She heard a sound outside her home in Canovanas. Not a bark, not a screech. A sound she would later describe as like a snake, but angry, like it was hissing through its teeth. She went to the window. And there, in the yard, under the pale light of a street lamp, it stood. She said it was about 5 feet tall, bipedal, human-shaped if you ignored the proportions. One in the arms hung too low, the legs bent backward like a kangaroo's, thick, muscular, built for leaping. And along its spine, a row of spines, or quills, or thorns. She could not say which, and only that they stood upright, like a mohawk made of bone. Then she saw the face. The eyes were red, not reflective red, glowing red, like embers, like something was burning behind them, and in the mouth, a long, narrow snout. No lips, just teeth, small, needle-like teeth, too many of them, and then... For a moment, it did not move. It simply watched her. Then it hissed. The same serpentine sound she had heard from the darkness, and then it leapt, 20 feet, straight up, over her roof, and then gone. Madeline Tolentino did not sleep for 3 nights. When daylight came, the yard was empty. No footprints, no blood, nothing she could prove. Only the memory of 2 red eyes disappearing above the roofline. Now, here's where the story gets complicated. In July of 1995, the film Species opened in Puerto Rico. 1 month later, Madeline Tolentino described a creature with red eyes, spines along its back, and legs built for leaping. The resemblance was hard to ignore. Tolentino said she had not seen the film. Skeptics argued that the image could have entered the story through news coverage, memory, or simple coincidence. But the animal reports came first. Months of dead livestock had already established the pattern, at least according to the accounts coming out of Canovanas. So, the question is not whether a movie inspired one witness. It may have. The harder question is whether it explains the killings that came before her sighting, and while people argued over what she saw, the name was already taking on a life of its own. The Puerto Rican press needed a name for the story. They found one in 2 words, El Chupacabras, the goat sucker. It was short, visceral, easy to repeat, and once it appeared in headlines, every unexplained animal death had a shape waiting to be placed over it. The name did more than describe a creature. It created a category. A dead goat became a possible attack. A strange sound became a warning. A shadow at the edge of a field became a witness account. By the end of 1995, Chupacabras was no longer just a local story from Canovanas. It was a story looking for somewhere else to happen. Within weeks, reports began appearing beyond Canovanas, first across Puerto Rico, then across the Caribbean and Latin America. The details changed. The pattern did not. Livestock found dead, puncture wounds, little or no visible blood, and sometimes a witness who described a gray shape moving through the dark. The reports were associated with the Dominican Republic, Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua, Chile, and Argentina. Newspapers, radio programs, and television repeated the story until the map itself began to look like evidence. But a red dot on a map proves only that a report was made. It does not prove that the same animal was there. That distinction was easy to lose in the noise. The phenomenon was spreading, or the story was, By the time the name reached the mainland, those two possibilities had become almost impossible to separate. The story was no longer confined to Puerto Rico. In 1996, a report attributed to a rancher near Calama, Chile, described 43 goats dead in a single night. The animals were said to have been inside a fenced enclosure. No obvious breach, no clear tracks leading in or out. Then came another account, this time from Nicaragua. A farmer reportedly lost 200 chickens in 1 week. The numbers were dramatic. The details were frighteningly familiar. Puncture wounds, little visible blood, and no predator anyone could confidently name. But numbers can travel faster than evidence. Every retelling made the pattern feel more precise, and every new headline made the next report easier to recognize. Then the story crossed the border. Cuero, Texas. A rancher named Phyllis Canyon found a strange carcass on her property and preserved it. The photographs spread quickly. Hairless skin, a long snout, teeth that looked too large for the body. No familiar ears. Nothing about it seemed ordinary. The media gave it a headline, Chupacabra found in Texas. Soon, cameras arrived. Reporters arrived. The carcass became a traveling piece of evidence, displayed, photographed, and argued over. To some people, it looked like the creature described in Puerto Rico. To biologists, the first question was simpler. What animal was this before the hair fell out? The answer came from the laboratory. A DNA analysis described in later reporting identified the carcass as a coyote, Canis latrans, suffering from severe sarcoptic mange. The explanation fit the photograph. Mange can cause extreme hair loss. The skin can look blue-gray. The animal can become thin, sick, and almost unrecognizable. On paper, the Texas monster had become a diseased coyote, case closed, except the DNA answered one question: what the carcass was. It did not answer every question about the goats found dead in the same region. A mange-ridden coyote can look horrifying, but appearance is not proof of exsanguination. The laboratory gave the body a name. It did not settle the legend. The coyote result changed the argument. It did not end it. Because there are two different questions here. What was the carcass found in Texas? And what happened to the animals people found dead? The DNA addressed the first question. A diseased coyote can look like a monster. It can explain the hairless skin, the strange color, the sunken body, the teeth that seem too large. But a photograph is not a feeding pattern. If the goats were killed by ordinary predators, then why did witnesses describe the same punctures? Why did the story keep returning to the absence of blood? The skeptical explanation was strong. The unresolved details were stronger than they should have been. This is the point where the case stops being one monster story and becomes a contest between explanations. Theory 1. An unknown species. The simplest version imagines a predator native to the Caribbean basin, hidden in dense jungle, pushed closer to farms by development, and never properly documented. Its supposed wounds invite comparison with a vampire bat, small punctures, a clean opening, a feeding method that leaves less damage than a dog or a mongoose. But scaling that behavior up is a problem. A bat is small. The creature in the witness accounts was not. It stood upright. It moved through trees. It was described as heavy, muscular, and capable of extraordinary leaps. Nature can be strange, but strange does not mean unlimited. There is no confirmed specimen, no verified tissue sample, no photograph that settles the question. The unknown species theory explains the wounds by inventing an animal we have never found. That is its power and its weakness. Theory 2. A genetic experiment. This theory begins with real places and adds an unverified escape. Puerto Rico has long been connected in the public imagination with military facilities, primate research, and biological experimentation. The theory names Fort Buchanan and the Caribbean Primate Research Center, then asks what might happen if a modified organism left a controlled environment. Part reptile, part mammal, built to survive, built to feed. It sounds like a classified file, but atmosphere is not documentation. There is no public record confirming a spliced creature escaped into the hills. No declassified report naming an animal. No chain of evidence connecting a laboratory to a farm. The theory survives because it occupies the space between what is known and what is hidden. And in a place where the jungle can conceal almost anything, silence begins to feel like evidence. It is not evidence, but it is very good horror. Theory 3. Extraterrestrial or interdimensional. This is the theory built from the details that feel least biological. The red eyes, the hissing, the way the creature seemed to watch instead of react. The leaps that, in the witness accounts, appear to ignore ordinary biomechanics. For people who study UAP reports, the Chupacabras can be placed inside a larger pattern, not a visitor, but a biological instrument. Something sent to observe, collect, or test. It is a frightening idea because it explains the creature's intelligence without requiring the creature to be the visitor. But it also depends on every uncertain detail being accurate. The eyes must have glowed. The jump must have been measured correctly. The wounds must have been made by something that did not feed in a normal way. If any one of those details changed in the retelling, the theory loses its foundation. The sky offers no answer. Only more room for the question. Theory 4. Mass psychogenic illness. Fear spreads through a community faster than facts do. One farmer loses goats to a feral dog. Another hears the story and expects something worse. A third sees damaged livestock through the image already supplied by newspapers, radio, and television. The narrative creates a shape. Then the shape comes back as testimony. This theory explains the contradictions. It explains why the creature changes from island to island. It explains why the descriptions echo whatever image is already circulating. It also explains why a film might matter. One witness sees a monster on screen. The next witness inherits the monster through her description. But mass fear does not automatically explain every carcass. It explains interpretation. It does not, by itself, identify the predator. Maybe the story became a feedback loop. Maybe something real entered the loop first. And once a community has a name for the dark, it becomes almost impossible to hear the dark without using it. For theories, unknown species, genetic experiment, something from somewhere else, or a story that learned how to reproduce itself. None of them explains the whole pattern. Each one solves a piece. None solves the case. In 2023, a report surfaced from Orocovis, a mountain town in Puerto Rico. A farmer said he lost 9 goats in one night. He described wounds that sounded familiar, punctures, little visible blood, and a silence afterward that felt worse than the loss. No camera recorded it. No authority published a report I could verify. He buried the animals. Then he told a neighbor. The neighbor told me. That is not proof. It is one more account entering the pattern. The Chupacabras is not a solved case. It is not a debunked myth. It is a pattern people keep recognizing across different places, different animals, different decades. That does not prove one creature traveled from Puerto Rico to Texas. It proves the story has found the same fear in many landscapes, jungle, scrubland, the gaps between streetlights, the places where darkness is complete. Whether the pattern belongs to an animal, a legend, or both, it keeps reopening. And then, for a moment, there is nothing. No answer. No movement. Only the sound that began the story. A distant hiss. Then nothing.